go find my child called cube, get me the game object part of it. And I want this wall to have a new layer. Layer mask. Name to layer. What did I call my layer? Wall. Awesome. Wall. So I'm switching the layer of that object when it gets triggered, when something is close. We've got pieces up there. I already triggered it because I ended up here in this corner. As I move around, I'm entering the triggers in these invisible triggers that we can't see and making that code happen. So my maze is coming together as I wander up and down the walls. Does that make sense? Questions about triggers? Yeah.
We also use the same triggers that are on the floor to like show where we are in the main map. You could just render your.
We could. The floor that I made when I was running through this tutorial is one big floor.
Oh, okay.
So I can't make the individual tiles light up. But we could. What I could do to help us visually, we can look up here and see in our little overhead view where we've been. It'd be nice as we're wandering the maze to see where we've been too. So let's go ahead and give that wall a new texture. Go talk to the wall renderer. Material, texture, or no, not texture, let's do color, equals a new color. Because we've got a reference to it, let's do stuff with that wall. We changed its layer, and now we're going to change its color. So where we've been now is yellow. So as I wander around, I can see visually the places that I've been. And you can have it do anything you want. When you enter that trigger, if the trigger is on the object itself, then it'll change it. But if it's not, like I still have to collide into these walls. I can't go through them because the wall itself has a collider on it. That's not a trigger. But the invisible thing that I added to the wall is a trigger. And it's talking to the child cube and changing that cube.
So you could set like a decay to these colors, like stop being yellow after 2 seconds, so it's like it only shows where you've been recently. Like that.
Interesting idea. When we're talking about time, now we start to get into coroutines. Did anybody encounter coroutines along the way? It was one of the first things in that tutorial. I didn't talk about them on Tuesday at all.
You didn't really explain it in the tutorial.
Not terribly well. They were explained in a previous tutorial much better. But he just assumed, hey, you've been following my tutorials, coroutines. What kind of questions do you have about coroutines? Did they make sense? Did they not? They help with a lot of things. Loading screens. It helps whenever you want to talk about time. Notice in all the code we were writing before, we never talked about a time delay. Well, it didn't really matter in the creation, but now in update, when we want things to happen, we're not talking about time. There is a big loop going on outside the code that we just don't see. We're not able to really access or talk to that loop. Update is the thing that gets called once per frame. There's also something called fixed update that happens at a certain amount of time. But there's no way to really say, well, let's do this and then write some code here to say Like wait 2 seconds and then color it back. Because that would take the priority away from the game loop, which updates the camera, which updates everything, every fraction of a second. You would be essentially pausing the game for 2 seconds right now. Nothing would get updated, nothing would happen if you tried to take control right here and write a while loop to wait. So we can't do that. And the way we do it instead is with this coroutine idea. It runs at the same time as the update loop. So we need to write them slightly differently. There was some, instead of void, we have to call them what? What's the return type of a coroutine? Anyone remember that? The IEnumerator stuff, yes. Let's just do a very simple one. I'm going to do a coroutine, and it's going to be called change back. Essentially, let's do this stuff. Change it back to color 111. And the way we wait 2 seconds is right before that, we're going to say yield return a new wait for seconds 2. So when this function gets called, the first thing it's going to do is go to sleep for 2 seconds. And then it wakes up and says, ah, now it's time to change the color of this thing. We can't just call it and say change back. We could, but it doesn't really work well. It lets us do it, but that's not the right way to do it. We really want to say start coroutine change back. Oh, stop helping me so much, Mono. Start coroutine based on the name of it, and that says, oh, you're something that really needs to care about time. I'm going to run you slightly differently in a different thread and put you together. You're not on the main thread of what's happening. Let's see if that works. 2 seconds, it changes their color. So the yellow tells us sort of where we are at the current time. Can I get out of this maze? Probably not. But interesting idea, good question. Coroutines can let things happen at a different amount of time and really give us a bit of more access back to that time loop that we don't see. Okay, other questions? Yeah?
Just a comment. You can actually get rid of the background of your viewport and like just have the maze being rendered instead of the blue background.
Yes, you can. We can look at our camera and say, what are you going to really do? The clear flags. Clear flags talks about what should I do every time I want to draw on the screen. Usually it says wipe it clean with the skybox and then put stuff on top of it. Next fraction of a second, wipe it clean with the skybox and then put stuff on top of it. But you can get rid of that. You can say, I don't want this solid color, I just want the depth, I don't clear anything. And so it just draws it up there.
Wrong camera. Wrong camera.
Whoa, this is horrible. Yes. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, okay. Yeah. Skybox is important for that one. They're both called main camera. Let's call this one overhead camera. Better. Better. Don't clear. Okay. So now it's just this little overhead piece, no background. Which is nice, as long as you're not staring at something of that exact same color. Like, where did my stuff go? I don't know.
Like a slightly transparent background behind it. Right?
You could
like
put
if you do like the solid color, you can give it like an alpha value.
You should be able to give it an alpha value. You should be able to do some other stuff. If you get really fancy, you can start putting a shader on that camera. I think that's part of the pro version, so that things would look different in this camera than they do in that camera. And the visual way that it's showing up would be slightly different. Okay, other questions? Yeah.
One actual question. Do you think that we should change our floor to be like just 2 triangles instead of like 100 triangles? Or do you think it matters at all?
It matters if you want to use that floor interactively. If you want to change the floor and make it move around or have different pictures in different places, you want to have different tiles for them. Or you want to be generating a huge image initially, drawing on that image, and then pasting that texture on top. It's another faster way to do it, is to say, yes, I have one big square. I'm going to make it look different by writing out whatever I'm doing in this maze. At the same time that you're generating the maze, you could be generating a JPEG or a PNG image. And then dynamically, once you're done, you slap that on, and then it would sort of bake things into your image. You could bake some things right around the edges of the walls. You could do different stuff, have holes in different places that are just there for fluff, that aren't interactive. But if you want to make the things interactive, then you want to have individual pieces for your floor. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do was to add in some kind of enemy, some kind of thing moving around. I demonstrated that right at the end. Let's see what it would take to do that. So I need some kind of new object. Let's make a sphere. And that sphere, let's make it show up at 1, 0. Can't see it. It's behind a wall. Oh no, it was there. Where is it? There's my cube, my sphere. Okay, so this sphere is now in the game. And I'm going to try to make it follow me. Just wander around first, just so you can see some of the forces involved in the script to make it do things autonomously. So, there's my sphere. I need to make a new script for it. Ghost move script. Ghost move script goes on my sphere. Hey, there you are. Okay. Let's make it do stuff. What?
Like have it kill you.
You could have it kill you. You could have it bounce off the walls, is what we're going to do first. Just to say it's colliding with things. We collided with triggers. We made things happen inside our picture. Here's the update. Here's my simple way to make it move around. Let's talk to my rigid body and add a force. Forces are going to be in vectors. And to really think about movement for this upcoming stuff we're doing, we've got to think of ourselves in some kind of three-dimensional space, thinking about vectors. And how do we change? How do we say, here I am? We're going to start adding